Guys, welcome to the I Love CVille Show. It's Jerry Miller. It's great to be with you on a fantastic Wednesday across Charlottesville and Central Virginia. We are now about a half a day removed from some big-time elections across the city of Charlottesville, across Albemarle County, and across the Commonwealth. A passion of mine, as Charlotte Woods just said kind of right before the show, you have three politic nerds on set right now that love to follow this with a burning passion. We're going to welcome our guest very shortly, Elliott Harding in the house as well, good friend of this program, someone who knows politics inside and out. He's kind enough to join us. We encourage you guys to like and share the show. Give it a like, give it a share on any of the channels that you are watching. We're going to talk about the city council race and what transpired. I think Michael Payne winning quite handedly. Lloyd Snook in the 2 slot. Sena McGill in the 3 slot. Sally Hudson, we talk about winning handedly. She crushed Kathleen Galvin. I think that's safe to say. And then we're going to talk about what happened in the Albemarle County Board of Supervisors, where a local and Jerrod Smith lost to someone who's new to the area. So we're going to spotlight all those stories on the I Love CVille Show. We'll thank some of the sponsors that make the program possible. First, we'll give some love to Interstate Pest and Service Companies. We are their proud advertising agency of record. The business started in 1969 with 1 man and 1 truck. Mr. Wells went to his first home, serviced it successfully, and then would head to the closest payphone in 1969, where he would call his second customer from a payphone and said, "May I come visit and service your home now?" Today, 4 generations strong and almost 100 employees with a Commonwealth-wide footprint. We'll give some props to the good doctor of Scott Wagner Chiropractic and Sports Medicine. Dr. Wagner is changing people's lives. Physical therapy, chiropractic care, sports medicine. Who's got your back? Dr. Wagner's got your back. Harris Tolbert, Judah Whitcower, Lauren Linsky, and the team upstairs making the show possible. I think we should go to the studio cam and welcome the folks to the set. Gentleman over here, Elliott Harding. Hello, Elliott.
How's it going? Thanks for having me.
Our pleasure. Charlotte Woods, her first rodeo on the I Love CVille Show. How's it going, Charlotte?
Good so far, thanks. Yeah.
Good. Thank you for coming on. We'll start ladies first. She was making her rounds. You were, Charlotte. You were at, you said Sally Hudson's camp last night, Michael Payne's camp. She put together, along with the team at Charlottesville Tomorrow, she's the government and land use reporter, a fabulous voter guide on Charlottesville Tomorrow that I read and followed closely. I shared it on social with some of my friends. I love what you're doing at Charlottesville Tomorrow in such a short time. Let's start with last night. Your take on what transpired in a number of races last night, Charlottesville, Albemarle County, across Central Virginia and the Commonwealth.
So something I've heard I've lived here 2 months, but covering government, it makes you learn very quickly what constituents care about, what are the issues. But something I've heard in these past 2 months regarding LaPisto Kirtley and Jerrod Smith, as well as Sally Hudson and Kathleen Galvin, is that these races are going to be close. They're both such good candidates. We're in good hands either way. So I really knew those were the races that I was going to keep a really tight eye on. And it ended up being that Board of Supervisors in Albemarle County, Ravenna District, B wound up winning. It was a close, tight race. And then, as you said earlier, Sally Hudson won in a much larger margin. And so the room last night, being at her party, it was pretty laid back and chill. Everyone was just very happy for her. A lot of her supporters were there. I also bounced over to Michael Payne's party, which was nearby, and Mayor Nikiah Walker bounced between the 2 parties as well. And in Michael's party, it was really an energetic room as everyone realized that he was winning, and not just winning, but being the top voted candidate. So, yeah.
Interesting turn of events last night. Lucia Woods is giving you props. Am I saying her first name right?
Who?
Lucia Marie Woods. She's giving you some props right now on social media.
Okay.
Janica, you got some tough names on your friend list right here. Janica Ecklow is watching. James Ellens is watching right now. Give it a like, give it a share on any of the channels you're watching. Richard Fox says, "What up?" Elliott Harding. I'm gonna get out of your way and ask what your take from last night was.
I think your grandfather's Democrat Party is done in Virginia. The party has moved left, very left. It's not just here locally, it's statewide. The minority leader in the state Senate only won by about 1%. He got challenged by progressive Commonwealth's attorneys up in Northern Virginia. All the progressives won, swept those races. Sally Hudson on her platform smoked Kathleen Galvin, and honestly, I think she would have trounced David Toscano had he still been in the race. And, you saw her only pick up momentum after he said he wasn't running again. You see Michael Payne be the largest vote getter of the city council members. So, and this is after, AOC did what she did going into a 2018 midterms up in national politics. It's trickling its way down, and it's here in Charlottesville, and it's probably here to stay. So it'll be interesting to see how the Democrat Party shifts over time from a policy standpoint. Do they hold the old guard accountable for their more moderate or possibly conservative voting records as incumbents? What happens if they get the majority? What what type of unified front are they going to push? I don't know. It's easy to say you're going to do something when you're in the minority, but it's a lot harder to actually do it when you're using live ammo as a legislator. And so someone like Sally replacing David Toscano is a ideological shift within the Democratic Party. And I don't know how Virginia's going to handle it, but I know that Charlottesville is very energetic.
Great answer right there. Let's cut both into sizzle reels, highlight reels, please. I'm going to get you in the mix here. Charlotte, let's give some props to the people that are watching the show. On your feed, Abby Guskin. She says, Elliott Harding, so excited to see you. Last night, you rock. Paul John says, hello, Elliott Harding. Give it a like, give it a share, just like Willie Deutsch has done, like Caroline Saul has done, like David Caron has done. Let's throw you in the mix. I'm going to throw a couple of statistics out there. Voter turnout, we'll talk city council race, was low. As of, and I'm going to compare it and contrast it to the 2017 election.
Yep.
And in 2017, it's not a fair, perhaps, comparison.
Gubernatorial.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm gonna get out of the way. You answer why it's not a fair comparison. In 2007, as of 4 p.m., voter turnout was at 40%. In 2019, last night, voter turnout was 13%. I mean, that is a huge disparity. Thoughts on the metrics? Why?
Well, I mean, yes, as much as we can talk about a growing progressive movement and younger people getting involved in politics, it is a fair and an unfair comparison simultaneously, because 2017 was also a gubernatorial race. And so in the same regards as people pay attention more during presidential races, the governor is basically the president of your state. So I feel like more people were probably paying attention to local and state elections during the House and City Council and things. Whereas this election was, it is also falling, though, during a year where all 140 House and Senate seats are up for grabs. So I would think that would draw a little more attention to local elections as well, but definitely lower turnout rate compared to 2017.
I like that answer. Check the light on that camera for us, Harris Tolber, if you could. Get you in the mix. And you got a lot of folks watching. First, you're getting some love from, is it Licia Marie Woods? Am I saying her first name right?
Licia Marie Woods. That is my cousin.
Okay.
Hi, Licia.
She's saying baby Tristan and Ember are here watching you. Cousin Woods, love you. Elliott Harding's getting some props in D.C. from Paul John, who's asking his favorite uncle. We can get to that later. Elaine Thomas is saying hello. Give it a like, give it a share. Voter turnout, not great.
Well, and she mentioned 17. 15 would be the better comparison because we're on what's called an off year. Because we have elections every year in Virginia.
Seriously.
And so, you don't have a presidential, you don't have a congressional or a Senate, you don't have the gubernatorial, so there's no over ticket but for Senate or House races. And in this area, the 17th was the only one with the Senate primary. So that was up in northeastern Albemarle County. One thing I'll also note, though, is, earlier I was talking about how progressive the party has moved in Virginia, but you also have to draw a contrast with the difference between the city and the county politics. Chan Bryant did a phenomenal job in getting the sheriff's nomination. She smoked Pat Estes, who was running on a more progressive platform for that sheriff's race. And I think that it goes to show that county politics really appreciates folks who are from the area, who understand the local issues, who understand the nuances of Crozet or Scottsville or Keswick or Forest Lakes, kind of the ability to know the lay of the land. They don't necessarily move and vote only on a national platform or an ideological platform, whereas the city definitely gets riled up on buzz issues. So there is a contrast between the two localities, I think, that showed itself in the sheriff's race as well.
To play devil's advocate with you, and jump in anytime you want, Charlotte. To play devil's advocate with you, the Board of Supervisors race with B and Jerrod Smith would contradict that.
And to that
a
little bit, and to that end, I'm not as familiar with her background and how new she.
You know her well.
Yeah, and so maybe she can speak to that. It's a Board of Supervisors race where the things that were going on above it were the Senate primary between Amy Laufer and Ben Dixon. Laufer had won handedly over Ben Dixon, but then you also had a Republican primary going on over top of that with Bryce Reeves and Rich Breeden. And so in the sheriff's race, you might have had more moderates or independents or even Republicans finding themselves voting in the Democratic primary for sheriff where there's nothing else going on. But in the Rivanna district, you probably saw voters have to go to the respective corners, and then that probably turned out going against Jerrod's favor because I think the local independents kind of look for the people that understand the local issues more.
Charlotte, jump in here. Your thoughts?
So B. LaPisto Kirtley, you mentioned new earlier. She has been here for 12 years, but Jerrod is born and raised from here. Yes. Yeah. He spent some time in Chicago as a mayoral fellow in 2014. He's a UVA grad. He's always wanted to go into politics.
Frank Batten Institute?
Yep. And then B. LaPisto Kirtley, retired educator, but she just can't stay out of the game. She has a very diverse political background, having served as a city council member, as a mayor, as a school board in California. And she's also been a teacher and a principal. So you've got, on one hand, someone who has a lot of experience jumping into the game, and then you've got someone who's getting there and has been priming and waiting for this moment. And both candidates, again, what I kept hearing was, they're both so good, they're both so good. So, and I think that reflects in the votes how close it was. And ultimately, it went to B.
It was a dogfight. I mean, I'm talking about really close, this race. Interesting metric I'm going to throw out to everybody while recapping the votes. B. Kirtley, LaPisto Kirtley, 896 votes. Jerrod Smith, 757 votes. We're talking about a race that was separated by 140 votes. How about throw that to you?
That's like one neighborhood.
Right. Right.
And that goes to show how close things can get. I mean, here we saw some larger margins, but all races can come down to something like that, especially when you have candidates that aren't going head to head at each other. They're kind of going out and finding their own voter blocks and running on their own merits. All politics is local. It really does show up with, maybe some people got stuck in traffic that day. Maybe some people, ended up changing their mind or thinking their vote wouldn't matter, and the votes do matter. And I'll say this much. Last night was a primary situation. The biggest upset in the Commonwealth probably was Joe Morrissey finding himself back in the General Assembly.
Fighting Joe.
And the thing is when you have these low turnout elections, that's when upsets can happen. Upsets happen when there's either a blowout or 3% show up. It's not when you get on par for turnout, because that's when you can gauge what's going to happen. But when it's low turnout, you never know what's going to happen, and folks aren't necessarily paying attention this year.
Mayor Walker, Charlottesville City Council, the mayor of our city here, she put this out on Facebook this morning. I'm going to throw it to you, Charlotte. Jump in the mix here, Elliott. There's only been one African-American to ever serve on the Board of Supervisors in the history of Albemarle County. I'll repeat the statistic. There's only been one African-American in the history of Albemarle County to serve on Board of Supervisors. Thoughts on the topic, Charlotte?
I think that is, aside from his experience and his passion, I think that's another reason why people were really cheering for Jerrod Smith. I know Ziona Bryant, who's the founder of the BSU at Charlottesville High School, she was tweeting about him yesterday as well. I saw Mayor Nikiah Walker at Payne's party and at Hudson's party, and Don Gathers was there as well. He was telling me I feel like a NASCAR driver because he had all these stickers for everyone he supports on him. And you're right, historically the Board of Supervisors has always been Caucasian people, so I think there's definitely been more of a push for more political representation of the diverse communities in the Charlottesville-Albemarle area.
What do you think? on the topic?
I mean, I wanted Jerrod to win. I think that as far as race is concerned, there's been times I've tried to recruit candidates to run in different parties who were racial minorities, and I think that there's a perspective absolutely to be brought from that realm. But Albemarle's a diverse county, especially when you start looking at the different parts regionally. I mean, down in the south area like Esmont and Porters and that area, you've got a lot more racial diversity. And ultimately, I think the future is bright for Jerrod. I think he ran a really positive campaign. I really appreciated his views on trying to improve skill-based training and K through 12. I think that it has a lot of crossover appeal for folks. And, him having gone through the local public school system here and having his priorities focused there. I heard him on several radio broadcasts. I think he's going to be all right. And ultimately, I think to Mayor Walker's point, that we're getting to, I think that'll change soon. I think as younger folks continue to get involved politically, you're not going to see any types of, well, not any, but you'll see less types of barrier of entry when it comes to racial stigmas or something like that.
I like that answer. Let's turn it into a sizzle reel. Start with my commentary, Charlotte's answer, and Elliott's answer. That's a highlight reel, undoubtedly. We'll get back to the city council race. Pinkston and Sena McGill. I mean, we're talking a dogfight for third place. And I was on the NBC29.com constantly hitting refresh and watching as the precincts were reporting and as the updated vote counts were coming in. I mean, Charlotte, I'll start open-ended and then we'll get into nitty-gritty. The spot for 3 with McGill and Pinkston, that was so effing tight.
Yeah.
Ball's in your court here. What did you think about what transpired with Pinkston and McGill?
I suspected Snook would do as he did because I walk around the town and I see a lot of his signs. But as far as Pinkston and Sena, or McGill, let me keep it, yeah, that was really tight. It was really close. I think they're both
110 votes.
Yes, and they're both similar candidates in the regards to their part of their platform is really like listening to their constituents, listening to their voters and their future people they'll represent. And I've been at multiple events where they're asking people, like, instead of here's what I want to do, it's what do you want me to do? And I think that resonated with voters, and then they just really had to decide down in the nuances if they wanted Pinkston or if they wanted McGill.
What'd you think? 110 votes?
Yeah, they provided similar talking points, their backgrounds. I mean, I met Brian first when he was on the Region 10 board. I was on the Region 10 board, and Sena worked with Region 10, and she was on the board. So their perspective locally with the Community Services Board with mental health and substance abuse rehab, they had similar talking points when they would go out. The listening component and kind of having I don't want to say moderate in ideology, but moderate in approach to listening and receiving feedback and taking people's diverse thoughts and concerns into consideration. That was similar rather than having a hard line on any particular stance. What's going to be interesting is to see where those votes go. I think Pinkston's votes end up going to Snook and to Bellamy Brown in the general. Sena
good analysis.
And Sena's are going to continue pulling from Payne's because you can't single shot people in the general. I mean, I guess you could in theory, but I don't see the Democrats doing that in the generals.
What, you're saying the Democrats vote in block for all 3 potentially?
Well, I think what you'll have is Sena and Michael Payne will have the same base. I think Bellamy and Snook will have similar bases, different but similar. And I think Pinkston's votes find their way more towards Snook and Bellamy than Payne.
Interesting. That's good analysis right there. Your thoughts on that topic right there. How Pinkston's votes, and I'm going to get the vote count on Brian Pinkston here. 3,073 votes for Brian Pinkston. Sena McGill, 3,183 votes. Disparity or margin of 110 votes for the 3 slot at the Democratic primary. Can you tell this stuff gets me jacked up and excited here? I love the local politics.
Sports.
That's kind of where it started. You can tell. Sports ball. Him too. Pinkston's votes. Your thoughts on where they trickle over?
I thought Elliott made some interesting points. We really don't know, and I think some of that also comes down to how the three that won the primaries want to approach the rest of their campaign. Do they want to be a cohesive unit and support each other and try to hold their seats together, all three of them? Or is it going to start being like Sena fighting for herself really hard to ward off Bellamy Brown as he approaches? Because he is an independent candidate, and I'll be writing about him and Paul Long, the other independent candidate, soon. And Bellamy Brown, he finally launched his website recently. He's been doing a lot of outreach. He's been studying up. And he's similar to Sena McGill in that regard, in terms of how Pinkston, McGill, and Bellamy are Brown are very much, I know that I don't have all the answers, but I know that I can get them kind of candidates.
Yeah, they're honest. They're not going to BS you. They're going to straight up say, I don't know this now, but I'll go and do the research later.
Exactly.
And then come back to you with the right answer, which I respect. I find it a breath of fresh air and refreshing in a category or an industry, if you may, that's oftentimes smoke and mirrors.
And in politics, you need a mix of people who kind of do have expertise and know certain areas very well, but you also need those people who are open-minded to learn a jack of all trades. And because those differing perspectives is how you get good policy coming forward.
What are your thoughts on this metric? I'm going to throw it to both you guys. Elliott, why don't you go first? Nolan Stout in the Daily Progress and his coverage, according to the unofficial counts from the Charlottesville Registrar's Office, at least 4,050 ballots did not have three candidates selected on them. So some single shot and double shot strategy happening there. Your thoughts?
It goes to what I said at the beginning. I think the people that were more likely to be single-shotting were the folks that were the more progressives. Nikiah Walker, I think, referenced single-shotting prior to the race. I think something happened. I don't know if it was on social media.
I saw some Twitter thread.
It was social.
It was something of that nature. And, of course, she was very, very close with Michael Payne. Michael Payne helped her.
Was her campaign manager.
Exactly. So, if you're seeing single-shotting, I think you're seeing it by the progressives more than the traditional party apparatus, because historically, until this last election with Mayor Walker's race, you're seeing the entire Dem block kind of move in one piece. But then when Lawfer and Hill, were running, one makes it on, one doesn't. And so you're seeing the shift where I'm not necessarily allegiant to somebody with a D next to their name as much as I have allegiance to an ideology or a set of principles. And I think that that's what you're seeing with those figures.
And I know at the state level, something that Sally Hudson wants to address is ranked choice voting when you have elections like these where you're not having a Republican or a Democrat like binary choice, and you have a primary and you've got 5 Democrats running. So I know that's something that she, I think, plans to address at the General Assembly level.
What are your thoughts on that topic? I think it's a refreshing way to vote.
It could be.
What are your thoughts?
I'm a huge fan.
Yeah?
I would want to see that.
Tell us why.
It starts breaking down the stranglehold that the parties have on the system. I mean, right now, a lot of people feel forced to join one camp or the other when they might fundamentally disagree on a series of issues. And so, everybody says you're never going to see a third-party candidate, but third party, in theory, is Republican, Democrat, and somebody else. It could be independent, it could be a libertarian, it could be Green Party. And they're right, the current structure doesn't allow for that, but ranked choice voting would allow for rather than it be winner take all, it would be able to at least over time shift a series where people get a little bit more out of their elections, their voices a little bit more heard. And you're going to see, I don't want to say you're going to see bipartisanship every day, but you're going to see kind of cross-pollination of issue advocacy.
Yes,
So
good
that's
point.
where I see it.
How about this topic, guys? Michael Payne, he wins in convincing fashion. I know the vote count at the end got a little closer with Payne and Lloyd Snook. Michael Payne did not raise the most money. That honor went to Lloyd Snook. Lloyd still has the most money in the war chest. Let me throw the fact that he took 7 out of 9 precincts, Michael Payne, in the city of Charlottesville. And I think the only ones Lloyd won were Walker and Alumni. Okay, the only precincts that Lloyd won. 7 out of 9, open-ended question, went to Payne. Thoughts on that topic?
He stated from the beginning of his campaign he didn't want to take funding from large corporations or organizations. He really led a grassroots campaign. He has said time and time again he wants to take his community organizing background and apply that to how he'll operate as a politician. And I think that spoke to a lot of people who are so used to the status quo of candidates raise money, candidates aggressively campaign with that money, then candidates get voted for. And he really took that hybrid approach of being a community organizer, really doing a lot of canvassing, getting out there, talking to his voters directly. And I think that is a large portion of why 7 of the 9 precincts were going, I'm going to vote for this guy.
Thoughts?
I think that Michael Payne is another symbol. Same with Mayor Walker with her race. That money is not the only resource to winning elections. There's a counterbalance, and that is populism. And that is, are you going after the most people? And votes are what matters. Money doesn't vote. Money can try to tell people about the brands or the candidates or the election. But if you can whip up people's energy and passions and emotions in a way that is cheap. And he put in the legwork. He put in a lot of time. He went to a lot of city council meetings and spoke week after week, or every other month about
all the time.
And that's free airtime. That's free. Everybody who's watching that is an activist in some regard. There are people that pay attention, and it built momentum. And momentum can be built without money. In fact, I think it's almost inherently requires that. Populist, and I don't mean that in a pejorative way, populist. I mean it people-centric rather than slow and steady campaigning. It's more of what can we do collectively as people to make a movement out of something. That doesn't cost money. That requires genuine thought. It requires a degree of charisma in the particular crowds that you're trying to attract. And I think Michael had a strong base.
Yes.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was going to say, at his watch party last night, I definitely saw a lot of city council regulars who also speak during public comment period. They were there. They came to show support, and they were really happy for him.
What was you were firsthand there. What was the watch party like at Michael Payne's? What was the mood? Give us the flip book, if you may, of the watch party.
So by contrast to Sally Hudson's, which they shared, they're a comms director, actually, a UVA student I spoke with, and I will transcribe that interview later. But yeah, so his party was very energetic. It was a crowded room at Quality Pie, and everyone was so excited as the pages were being refreshed and they were watching him climb in the polls. And when he gave his speech, everyone was just really pumped. And at Sally Hudson's party, it was people kind of figured out earlier on in the night, she's got this, and it was really laid back.
That was Champion?
Yes, she was at Champion Brewing.
Okay. We got a question coming in. We've touched on this briefly, but I want to go back to this for the viewers that are just joining us now on the show. Give it a like, give it a share on any of the 7 channels you're watching here on the I Love CVille network. We'll start. I'll give some perspective on this. Jojo Robertson follows local topics and local news very closely. She says, what results from last night were the most surprising for you guys? I'm going to throw mine out there, throw yours out there. Elliott, you jump in. I was most surprised by this. 2 things. 7 of 9 precincts going to Michael Payne. Most surprising for me right there. I was most surprised because I thought Lloyd had a lot of the momentum going into the primary and was on the tip of tongues, had the signs out there, had the most money in the war chest. So I was most surprised that Payne won 7 of 9 precincts. And the thing that really surprised me the most, and Charlotte, I'm going to throw it to you, Sena McGill nipping by 110 votes, Brian Pinkston for the 3rd slot in the primary. We knew that was going to be a dogfight, but Sena came on strong of late and kind of counterbalanced Brian Pinkston's momentum going into yesterday's primary. Your thoughts on what surprised you?
Now I'm suddenly speechless. No, I would say that I share a lot of the similarities with you on what surprised me. And again, also 57th. For months now, it's been, they're so close. And it wasn't till Election Day going around to the polls and seeing a bit more Hudson signs, talking to a bit more Hudson voters, that I realized she probably was going to get it. But it was surprising, but not surprising at the same time, if that makes sense.
For me, I wouldn't call it a surprise. It was just a confirmation of what I thought. So I went and attended when Sally Hudson launched her campaign, and you saw the energy in the room then. And what I felt there was David Toscano is going to have a run for his money. And everybody's thinking here he's the minority leader in the House, and he's, several term incumbent. And I'm thinking this isn't about him as much as it's an ideological shift, and last night was a confirmation of that shift. So it's not a surprise, it's just a validation that the mood has changed within the Democratic base, and the voters are changing, the issues are changing, the style of rhetoric and the prioritization of what matters, and how people are going to be held accountable. It's powering it down to more of the people rather than corporate interests or
your
things like
resume
that.
as a candidate is less important now.
Yeah, and that's another thing I noticed that kind of, I don't know if it surprised me as much, but because the city's different from the county again, but people don't, in the city, I guess, at the delegate level within the party aren't necessarily prioritizing local ties. That's something I prioritize, but Sally's only been here for a couple years. There are probably a lot of local Charlottesville-centric staples that she might not be familiar with, and I hope that she spends the next 5 months. I know she's going to go out and help Democrats, try to get elected. I hope she spends some of that time reaching out to businesses and voters and people in the district that she might not know. Because she's not asking for their vote right now. Why not? I mean, it's kind of laid back. There's no pressure, no anxiety. She doesn't have to go in and try to sell anybody. She can learn, what's going on in this part of town, or what's going on with this church group, or what's going on at this school. That way she can really carry Charlottesville's interests and Albemarle's into the General Assembly. That's not a surprise, but that's just something I noticed.
I got a message on Twitter. This is for you, Elliott. I want you to jump in as well, please. Elliott, it's Louise Long, longtime resident in Albemarle County. I know you follow the sheriff's race closely. Bryant beating Patrick Estes. Your thoughts on that, and do any have a chance against Ronnie Roberts? Good question.
I think Chan has a much better chance against Ronnie than Estes would have. Chan and Ronnie have a lot of overlap in the sense that they've been here forever. They're both been in local law enforcement for a very long time. They both are generally very well respected among locals and their communities and law enforcement. So I think I was not surprised that Chan won. Again, talking about validation, it validated what I feel Albemarle County prioritizes, and that is it's different than the city. The rhetoric that Estes was running on was very much city.
It would have flown better here.
Oh, absolutely. He was running a race as if consultants told him this is what Democrats care about. And in my perspective, the county's voters aren't as partisan. I mean, yes, they have been trending blue, but it's more about a moderate approach and an experienced approach, and I think Chan and Ronnie both have that, so it'll be an interesting race.
Thomas Gerhardt, welcome to the show. He's watching in Northern Virginia. Give it a like, give it a share on any of the channels you're watching right now. James Ellen says what up. Darren Langston says what up. Give it a like, give it a share on Elliott Harding's page. Johnson Carpenter watching right now. Larry Cosme. Kyle Cruey. Am I saying Cruey right?
Yep.
Thoughts on the sheriff's race? We've touched on it already. And you have a lot of perspective you can offer here. Ronnie Roberts seemed like, from the beginning, a heavy favorite to get this nod. Open-ended question to you on Albemarle County Sheriff. I'm curious on how, if anyone, if Chan can beat Ronnie Roberts. I don't think Chan's going to beat Ronnie Roberts. Ronnie Roberts, longtime spokesman in the city of Charlottesville. Is it Louisa County Sheriff right now? I mean, been around the block and then some for Ronnie Roberts. Thoughts on this race?
Well, part of why he decided to run as an independent is that he really wanted to make it like, I represent the community, not a party. And that's a very important part of his campaign, and he is very excited about that. In terms of how it'll shake out, this is where my somewhat new to town is kind of showing. In a lot of ways, how you talked about how Sally Hudson is going to have to get to know more of the longtime residents and business owners. I need to do that as well as a local journalist covering everything. So in terms of how Ronnie Roberts versus Chan Bryant go down in November, I would deflect to you as having more insight on that.
What do you think?
I think it'll be a reflection, the outcome will be a reflection of, does the county care more about the candidates or care more about party? The reason why I say is, to your point, I think if you asked a random person on the street who they know, whose name ID polls higher, it would be Ronnie's. He was the spokesperson for the city for about a decade. His mother was in law enforcement prior to him. You know, he knows everybody, and he's generally well loved, and he's a thoughtful guy. And Chan, you know, she's got her name out there a lot more since she's been the deputy. I'll also note another issue, though, is the only policy-based issue that you're really heard talk about in the sheriff's race is the local jail and ICE notification. Mm-hmm. And Estes tried to run with the counter position than the current sheriff, Chip Harding. And that is, we should continue reporting because that's what the law requires, and it makes sense. And I could go down a rabbit hole as far as why. But Chan and Ronnie both agree on what is considered the only political issue in a sheriff's race. I think if you ask both of them, I doubt either of them thinks that party representation is necessary in a constitutional office. Same way that Commonwealth's attorneys and clerks of court are constitutional officers. I think a lot of people would prefer to see those positions not have party affiliation. School board doesn't. Mm-hmm. I mean, we might know where they lie on particular things. They might be tied to certain parties personally, but they don't run as a Democrat or a Republican. Mm-hmm. They don't get a nomination. And I think with Ronnie going as an independent, he's kind of putting where his mouth is, whereas Chan is definitely going to try to use the institutional party support that's in Albemarle. So it'll be interesting. Does the party apparatus win it over, or does the candidate's personal appeal win it over? I don't know.
A natural transition to independence in the city council race. Mm-hmm. And when talking about the party apparatus, the Democrats, and whether McGill, Payne, and Snook run as a team on one ticket, saying there's 3 open spots, let's make the push together, let's put the primary behind us, and let's just make this push. Or a guy like Bellamy Brown, who you've had a chance to talk with, you've talked with. He's had 2 rodeos and 2 stints on this program. He is the independent I think anyone who follows this at all sees as the chance of getting a win. One independent has won in 70 years. That's our mayor, Mayor Walker. I'm going to throw this to you here. Bellamy Brown, November 5th, just launched his website. He's building awareness. He's going around. He went to, I would say, like the bottom of the 8th inning to get the necessary signatures, right? How do you see a Bellamy Brown impacting this race?
I definitely think it is going to, Payne might still continue to pull on top, but it will definitely be a struggle between Snook and McGill to hold on to this. Because I think also with Nakaya Walker winning and becoming our mayor as an independent, I think she shook things up and reminded everyone that Charlottesville is very much a blue bubble. It's a Democratic city. But she shook things up and reminded people, you don't have to vote for a Democrat just because you happen to be one. And I think some of that sentiment will carry in as Bellamy Brown ramps up his campaign and we approach November.
What do you think, Elliott?
I think that, first of all, now that you talk about it, after last night's results, I'm actually surprised that the more progressive side of the Democrat base didn't run an independent themselves. I think they're underestimating the amount of influence they have in the city. They put Nakaya as an independent outside of the party.
You're talking about indivisible Charlottesville.
Sure, the people that are a part of that group, how about everybody that voted for Nakaya and everybody that voted for Michael Payne?
Probably same people.
Yeah, Payne could have run as an independent and
probably done
just as well as going within the party. It's actually a surprise in hindsight that he decided to go through the party apparatus, because now he's on the same ticket as Lloyd Snook. And I'm thinking to myself, I don't see them doing that many events together. He's much more aligned with the mayor's views and approaches to things. And of course, they've had words.
They've had loggerheads.
Right. And so I don't, as far as Bellamy's contribution to the
he's watching, by the way.
Awesome.
Yeah, Sally Hudson's watching right now.
Hated both of them.
Yeah.
I'm interested to see him roll out his platform. Now that the primary's over, it's been very introducing himself. He's been on the debate stages. He's explained, his approach to breaking things down and his familiarity and ties to the city. All of that is like your foundation. And I'm excited to see, what his 2 or 3 things that he really wants to hammer home.
Because we haven't heard those yet.
No.
It's been more about a brand awareness.
But he hasn't had to.
Right,
and
that's true.
And that's on purpose.
Because it wasn't in the primary.
And I think it's respectable. He wanted to allow, I'm not speaking on his behalf, but it's me observing. I think he wanted to see how the voters were feeling yesterday, whose messages were resonating and why. And it's not that he's going to run his own race. It's not going to be only reflective on who won last night. But why get caught up in the fray of someone else's fight until you have to?
Especially, he has till November, so.
Exactly. Keep your powder dry, right?
What do you think?
I definitely think that Elliott has a point there. And also I just know that independent candidates that I've spoken with already, or candidates like for Board of Supervisors that are not having primaries, they're rolling out their campaigns a bit more slowly because they didn't have that sense of urgency. And so you have that time to kind of take a breath, analyze the climate, and just really be very strategic in what you want in a more, relaxed pace. I do expect things to start ramping up, though, especially now that the primaries are done. People are going to start. Donna Price got her website launched for Scottsville District recently. I know Mike Callahan I've seen his signs popping up. So, and Ann Malik has, I think, her first ever challenger in Steve Harvey. So
let's do some predictions and some crystal ball. Throw it out there. Let's say Snook. Let's say the Democrats run as your term and Apparatus as a team, and they make a push to get the 3 seats in council. And Snook, Payne, and Sena win the 3 open spots. That would leave us a council with Heather Hill, Mayor Walker, Lloyd Snook, Michael Payne, and Sena McGill. I think we can predict potentially safely that Payne and Walker would be voting in unison on a lot of things. Their politics align. I think we could say Sena's politics kind of drift to the Walker-Payne category or camp. Heather and Lloyd perhaps more in the conservative center. Here's what I'm going to throw out there. If a Payne, McGill, and Snook win the 3 open spots, you then potentially have progressives for the next 3 years controlling council should Walker, Payne, and McGill vote in unison on most things. Elliott Harding.
How about this? You'll see the issues that are prioritized. Affordable housing will be right off the bat.
Yeah.
And I think it'll be right off the bat, no matter who gets on there. I think
it came up a lot in campaigns.
I think you'll see taxes go up. I think you'll see very little care for the impact of taxes going up. I heard that on the trail. It's an ideological, I wouldn't say a blind spot. It's just it is considered and not really relatively. It's not viewed as a issue. I was having conversations with Michael yesterday about state policy, and taxes going up was kind of just the answer. And we almost saw that with the real estate tax hike. Thankfully, we didn't. But
lodging and restaurants, certainly.
Yeah, I think the business community won't be not just the focus. It'll be kind of
an afterthought.
It'll be it might even be an enemy, depending on which businesses and what we're talking about.
I agree with that.
And some people say that, well, that's not the role of government. Government should be focused on the people, not the businesses. They work in unison, right? And so if you see that break, I think you'll see certain regs, policies, mandates, ordinances, tax policy, large spending blocks. You'll see a lot of social programs created and maybe even the expansion of more agencies or boards or what have you. It'll be very active. It'll be very swift. I think dissent will be suppressed very quickly. And not to say that it wouldn't be suppressed if it was the other way around. I mean, if there was a 3 or a 4-to-1 block of another ideological thing, it might be suppressed. We've seen that with other councils as well. I hope that we can have more independence on the council. I hope Bellamy and Nakaya are both on there at the same time personally, because they have, they have such local city ties together, and by not being beholden to the party apparatus, they can challenge, their Democrat colleagues without having to have fear of internal partisan retribution.
What do you think, Charlotte?
I'm not allowed to really say what I prefer or what I would want. I am a objective reporter, but I
hypothesize.
I do think that Elliott brought up some interesting points, and I could understand and see some of that happening. Obviously, we know that affordable housing and climate are going to be huge things that that block would want to tackle, and I know that. Something else that came up a lot during all of the campaigns that I've been speaking with is the fact that we are a Dillon rule state. Yep. And I know that, at least for city council, a lot of those candidates have been discussing ways that they can better communicate to our state senators, our state delegates on things, because sometimes local issues get lost in translation when they approach the General Assembly. And, the fact that you have representatives from all around the state coming together, certain issues, someone from the other side of the state may not necessarily comprehend the urgency of it in the same way that a state delegate from Central Virginia would. And so kind of bridging the gap between local and state government on communication and strategic planning.
I just got a Facebook message from Michael Payne, literally 5 seconds ago. He's going to join us tomorrow on the show to talk about his impressive victory. And Michael, I see you're watching. Impressive victory yesterday, 7 of 9 precincts. Now let's crystal ball the other side of the coin. Mm-hmm. What we were just crystal balling was what happens if Snook, McGill, and Payne win, and how that's going to impact Charlottesville City for the next 3 years. Here's the other side of the coin. Bellamy gets the W, Bellamy Brown. Snook and Payne get the W. In that scenario, you potentially have Walker and Payne voting as a block. Then you have Bellamy, Snook, and Heather Hill, who are more centered, potentially voting not necessarily as a block, but more neutrally. Your thoughts on that topic?
This kind of goes back to our other point. That's why I'm excited to see Bellamy's platform, because I think there are a lot of things that he might work very closely with Michael Payne and Mayor Walker on. It might be the housing issue, whether it be the public housing that we have now or voucher expansion or something of that nature. It could be, job development, skill development. It could be the community services boards and things like that. But I also think with his financial background, he's going to have somewhat of a respect for the job production and revenue generation and the attraction of the city.
Yeah, financial services. In a lot of ways, a small business owner.
Right. And in that regard, I think it'll be more of a balanced approach, meaning I think he will recognize the issues that they're advocating for, while also having his
own perspectives,
a sober perspective of how to go about fixing them. In which case, you'll have him kind of torn between Snook and Hill, who I'm sure Hill will work very well with. And let's not act like Heather doesn't want to fix these issues either.
Yeah,
it's just a matter of.
She was in a tough spot on council when she was on in the year she was on.
Right.
I mean, it was like she was overwhelmed by what was happening. Not overwhelmed, that's the wrong word.
Right.
It's just that there was so much split voting. So much people on either side of the fence that nothing was getting done. I think we're and I'm going to throw it to you, I think we're now in a position going into the race where we're going to have a clear majority on one side or a clear majority potentially on the other side, and maybe stuff starts getting done in the city. Charlotte, jump in here.
I think you just had some good points there. And if Bellamy Brown does end up on council, he has the potential to be that swing voter on council where
really?
I could just see city council sessions where it's down to the wire on something, and then everyone's just kind of looking at Bellamy Come on, dude.
I think that's going to happen if he gets on council.
Mm-hmm.
It's a big, big spot. Tyler Bolin giving you props. Tyler Bolin says, give Elliott Harding his own show.
Oh, please.
I responded by saying Elliott Harding is fantastic. You're fantastic at this. Charlotte's fantastic at this, too. Three people that absolutely love local politics here. What struck you from Bellamy when spending time with him? Same one for you coming as well.
As I said earlier, he's very much he wants to approach things where he's really reaching out to voters and constituents. He doesn't want to just come in saying he knows things already or he has ideas or opinions already. Sometimes I think there's a lot of areas where he will want to do research. He will want to have a lot of feedback and conversations with voters. I could see him if he's in council chambers on the other side of the dais, just having a conversation, a meaningful conversation with someone during open comment period. I could see that taking place.
I think Bellamy wants to represent the city. I don't think he wants to represent a party. That's why he's doing an independent run. He doesn't want to be beholden to any particular faction of the city. He wants to be able to be accessible and listen to all the folks. I know that sounds cliche.
No.
Everybody could
refreshing.
say that, but it's not divisive. I'm tired of the division. Been here my whole life, and the division of the last 3 years has been, it's a fever pitch, and I think he's kind of an aloe to that in the sense that
Nice.
he's coming back home in a way to get back down to what the government's supposed to do, rather than protesting outside of businesses on the streets or individually calling out citizens from the dais. I don't think you're going to see rhetoric in a way that is meant to target. It's not going to be defensive. It's going to be on purpose and practical. And I hope, again, with the platform stuff, I'm interested in just seeing when those stands have to be taken. Meaning if he is at a dais and there is that swing vote, I've seen swing votes before. Bob Fenwick with the statue stuff, there was a time he just abstained and got booed at. And
in a lot of ways, that got us into the mess.
Well, and I would argue that was worse than just voting one way or the other.
1,000% agree.
Meaning people want you.
That's why you're on council.
Exactly. You are elected to take a position.
Right.
And not taking a position is not a position. And I think Bellamy will take those positions. I don't know where they're going to be on every particular issue.
Yeah.
But I think that it will be genuinely respected when they're taken because, again, his brand and who he is as a person is not caught up in the fray. It's caught up in the streets and with the people.
Kishore Thada.
Kishore
Thada.
Yeah.
Great hearing this insightful dialogue between you guys, giving props to Elliott Harding and Charlotte Woods right here. Give it a like, give it a share on any of the channels you're watching. We are 55 minutes in, and you guys are absolutely crushing it right now. Welcome Grace Masia, Jeremy Stanwyck, your old baseball coach, Harris Tolber. Skip Hudgens is watching, Western Albemarle's finest baseball coach. Let me throw this to you here. How do you see, and we can go anywhere you want here, how do you see November 5th playing out? I know you can make predictions. You're not endorsing anyone. You can make predictions. Bill McKenzie, welcome to the show. Margaret Matthews, thank you for joining us. Caitlin Michelle Lewis, how do you see it playing out if you were a betting woman?
Ooh, this is tough. I really think Sena McGill and Bellamy Brown are going to be hustling hard.
So you're saying Payne and Snook in?
They polled the highest. I've definitely seen their posters the most around town. That's not necessarily indicative because you have tons of voters who don't bother with the poster. I think it's safe to say Payne is probably going to sail in. Snook, McGill, and Bellamy Brown might be the ones that duke it out, in particular McGill and Brown. And Paul Long has run before and has not been found success, but...
Long and Hall in the mix as independents.
Huh?
Long and Hall in the mix as independents here. We got 3 independents running right now.
Oh, yeah. And Paul Long, though, he is very big transportation advocate. I know that Michael Payne wants to create a regional transit authority. And Long is if not really boosting himself up, he's really good at uplifting other candidates or highlighting areas that he feels they really will excel in. So pay attention to him as well.
She's a fantastic journalist, Charlottesville Tomorrow. She has to maintain a sense of independence and unbiasedness. You are an attorney that follows this for a passion. You do not have to maintain that.
You have such a privilege.
I think it's going to be Snook, Payne, and Brown.
That's what I think.
I've said that last time I was on the show. I didn't know how it was going to break for Brian or Sena. I don't think anyone knew yesterday how it was going to break. So I think we were appropriately saying that would be close. And it's not a reflection of Sena's race that I don't think she's going to win. I think that there's an entire voter block of people that aren't being taken into consideration when we talk about the general, and that is everyone who doesn't consider themselves a Democrat. They didn't all show up yesterday. A lot of people
We did have lower turnout rates.
Right,
yesterday.
a lot of...
So you're saying activity will be much higher on the 5th of November?
Oh, yeah. I mean, listen, there are independents and Republicans that do live in the city. And that might be enough to tip the scales away from a Democrat winning. It's almost the opposite of Nakaya's race, where, so many people were disenchanted with the Democrat Party that, they wanted someone who was going to go in there and unmask the illusion, right? But when it comes to how November 5th is going to break out, I think those are going to be your three. I think that the party isn't going to be strong enough to carry everybody through. I think they're going to have to make some soul searching and figure out how progressive does the party want to be. Does it want to go full tilt? In which case they stand to marginalize a lot of people. I don't think
it's going to.
I don't think so either.
And the reason I don't think it will is because I think Snook's politics and his ideologies are too centered compared to potentially Michael Payne's. Mm-hmm. And I think that if they go as a one unit or a team or one brand or a ticket, then in some ways it marginalizes or devalues the value proposition that Payne and Snook ran on in the primary.
Right. Yep.
What do you think about that?
I think you have a fair point there. And then also there's the fact that most people, there's always a higher turnout rate in November elections than in primaries. People are always usually aware November tends to be like election season. Mm-hmm. So I do predict we'll see larger turnout rates. And I agree with you that maybe the three Dems don't need to be trying to be a single unit. I mean, that could be helpful, but it could also alienate some voters.
I think it could alienate voters. I totally agree. Neil Williamson, Free Enterprise Forum, is watching right now. I'm going to give each of you guys a final word in the final 90 seconds of the program. We'll go with ladies first here in a matter of moments. Bobby Castine, welcome to the show. Sean Ayers, Barbara Lundgren, Steve Aruda, Stacy Brookman, Jennifer Lehman Morris. Bellamy still on the channel here. Looks like Sally is as well. We have a couple of folks watching from City Hall right now that have asked me not to name their names on air, which I have agreed to do. Welcome, City Hall. I'll just say it like
Hard
that. Final word. Charlotte, you crushed it today, by the way.
Thank you. I'm usually behind a camera, not in front of one. Thank you for having me on. It was really nice nerding out with the two of you.
Yeah, you're good at it.
So pay attention to, I'm going to shamelessly plug Charlottesville Tomorrow's voter guide. It will be updated ahead of November with all of the non-primary candidates. I've already met with many of them, and I am so excited to write their profiles, and I will continue to reach out to more, especially as school board in Albemarle County and Charlottesville City announced themselves. Some more of those have been trickling in, but thank you for following Charlottesville Tomorrow's work. Thank you for logging in and watching I Heart CVille, and thank you for having me on.
2 Board of Supervisors in Albemarle County are watching right now. Awesome. Elliott Harding, the show is yours, my friend. Final word.
I would just say in reflection of yesterday, it's something that's been building. I think that the folks in Charlottesville and Central Virginia should take pride in how engaged and energized the area is with political discussion. I think it's exciting to see the range of ideological diversity even within one party that came out yesterday. Lloyd Snook and Michael Payne are very different people with very different views within the same party. It's exciting to see all these independents running in different places, whether it be sheriff or for council. And I think that the voters should really double down on that and start opening their minds to considering what are the issues, what are the merits of the candidates rather than what's the partisan divide. I think we can continue to unify as a city when we break away from respective red or blue, Republican, Democrat corners. I think that the candidates are driving that conversation, and hopefully we can kind of become liberated from a divisive environment that politics has become.
Nicely done, both of you guys. My final word, guys, is getting out to vote. I'll throw the metrics out again. In 2017, the turnout was roughly 40% of voters in the city council race by 4 p.m. of voting day. Yesterday, 2019, 2 years later, 13% turnout. So you're talking about a very small percentage of voters that are determining the next 3 years of seats on council. And I think this particular race that's going to happen on November 5th is one of the most important in the history of Charlottesville, especially so close to August 12th, especially with so many important topics like affordable housing, public transportation, the West Main streetscape, the University of Virginia's role in the community on the horizon and on the table, and votes that will be cast upon the comprehensive plan is something else that we need to cover. So we need to get out on November 5th and hit the polls. It's not about I'm not saying who to vote for, I'm just saying engage and learn about the candidates. It's the I Love CVille Show. Tomorrow is Michael Payne on the show, gentleman who ran away with 7 of 9 precincts in the primary yesterday. He's going to join us to talk about his victory, what went right, what he needs to improve upon, whether the Democrats are going to run as a cohesive unit, what he thinks of Bellamy Brown, what he thinks about running a grassroots campaign where he did not get the most bank or the most dinero, the most money in the war chest, but still was able to get the most votes. We're going to spotlight all those topics. For Harris Tolber, Judah Wickower, Lauren Linsky, Charlotte, for Elliott, I'm Jerry Miller. We close the show the same way. Embody the golden rule. It's not about religion. It's about treating other people how you want to be treated yourself. Embody the golden rule and watch the viral impact it has across our community. We will see you at 3 o'clock with What's Barking Local, a new show on our network. It's a spotlight on the animal community in Charlottesville and Central Virginia. If you love animals, you're going to love this show. Have a good afternoon. Good work. You crushed it.
Thank
Seriously.
You.
Good work.
As always.
Thank you.
Yep.
It was
I don't know
fun.
why I was scared. It was okay.
It was so fun. You did so well. 132. Appreciate you guys. We will send you the content in a couple days. And Judah, you want to get their email? Well, we have Elliott's email address. We'll get yours.